Have you noticed the new Automate tab in Excel for Desktop? Now, I made a video before where I used it to bring AI GPT-3 into Excel. If you haven't watched it, watch it after this video, but not now, because what we're going to do today is really cool too. We're going to test record actions in Office scripts and move rows from one table to another table based on a value in a cell. How far will record actions actually take us? Well, you're going to have to see. This was actually inspired by one of our community members. I think it was on LinkedIn. And it reminded me of something I had to do every single day as a project manager. So there was one project I was working on that was quite intense. And we had to sit together and review all the tasks at the beginning of the day. We had this Excel table and all the tasks were listed there. My task was at the end of each day to remove anything that was completed and add it as a separate row to the bottom of another table, which was our archive tasks. This way, every day we start the meeting and there would be no done tasks on our active project list. It's a simple thing, right? But it was super annoying. For one, I lacked Excel skills, so I was doing every step manually, right? Cut, paste, delete. And two, sometimes I'd forget to do it and I'd be at dinner somewhere enjoying my meal with friends and I'd be like, oh my God, I forgot to move those rows, right? It was just an annoying little thing that was constantly on my mind. If only I had the Automate tab at the time, I'd never have to worry about it because the rows will be automatically removed during my sleep. I'd walk into the meeting, open the file, and everything would be done without me lifting a finger, right? The finger lifting though is something you need to do at the very beginning to get this whole setup done. There are two players involved here, Office scripts and Power Automate. You're gonna get them to work together and you'll have one less thing to worry about. Okay, so over here in Excel for Desktop, I have this simplified table with the different responsibilities, the priority of the task itself, and the status of the task. Now, this is officially an Excel table. We can see in table design, the table name is tasks. What I want to happen is that at the end of the day, all tasks that have status done are going to be removed from this table, and they're going to be pasted in a second table, which is sitting on my archive sheet at the bottom of this table. This table is called archives. Now, I want to create a script that does this, and I also want to outsource the script to Power Automate so that it's done every single night at, let's say, 10 p.m. My starting point is going to be right here, the Automate tab. So I'm in Excel for Desktop for Office 365 Enterprise Edition. I already have the Automate tab. If you don't have it yet, you'll have to use Excel on the web. But also keep in mind that Office scripts are also controlled by your admin, so they could be turned off for you and for your organization. To start writing your script, you could go to New Script. You're going to see the code editor pop up on the side. You have the main function, and you can type in your code here. But that's only if you know what you're doing. If you don't, because you don't, let's say, know how to reference a cell or how to reference a filter using Office scripts, you could get started by recording your actions. This way, at least you get some code that you can work with and tweak. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and record our actions. We can see the recording is running on the side, and we have to think this through to see how we could make this dynamic. I don't want to go and specifically select these rows because the code editor is not going to know what's the logic behind that. I want to tell it to only select done rows. So one way I could do this is to use the filter options. I'm going to go to status and only select done, click on OK. We can see the code editor is recording that action. Then I only want to copy the visible cells. So I'm going to press Ctrl A and then Ctrl C. Notice only the visible cells are being copied. This is the same as if you go to Special and select Visible Cells. And once we copied this, we are going to go to the archive sheet, go to cell A1, and use the shortcut key Control down to jump to the bottom of this table, and then go one more cell down, and then I'm going to paste Control V. So now let's go back to Task. I want to delete these rows, so I'm going to right mouse click and delete. Optimally, I want to delete the table rows, but I don't have an option here, so I'm going to go to delete and delete the entire sheet row. Okay, so these are gone. Now let's go to status and unfilter everything else. And we're back to our table. We've moved the done tasks. Everything is being recorded. I can just see a description of what's happening. I'm going to stop. Our code was generated. To view it, we can go to edit, and that's it. The great thing about the code is that we also get some comments that tell us what's happening at each stage. The question though is, does it work? So what do you think? Just by looking at this, do you think it's going to work? Well, let's try it out. I'm just going to copy these last 3 rows, paste them in here, and let's change some of these to done. I'll just change this one to done, and let's change this one to done. Okay, so if we run this, what we want to happen is that these rows that have done tasks are going to be removed from here and pasted on the bottom here. Okay, so let's run this and see what happens. It ran. One of them was removed. The other one is still here. What happened in archive? Well, everything was copied. It wasn't just a done task, but it was everything. So yeah, the code is clearly not working. It was kind of working 50%, but not what we needed to do. So we need to tweak this. Okay, so let's remove these rows here. Let's right mouse click, delete these table rows. Okay, so our archive is back to what it was. Now let's see what's happening here and what we need to tweak. We're going to start from the top. What the code does is that it's created a task object, so a table object, and it's assigned it to workbook.getTable tasks. This is my tasks table. So we can see that's the task table. Then it got the status column, and then it's adding a filter for done. Then it's assigned archive to workbook.getWorksheet archive. Okay, so far so good. The problem happened here. So after I did some investigation, I realized that it's always copying everything between the header and total. It doesn't copy the visible range. So we need to tweak that, and we want to copy the visible view. So we want to get visible view, and we have that method here, but unfortunately it doesn't work with the copy from. So we need to set this up in a different way. And the way I came up with is this. So first we can define our visible view. So we're going to define a variable for that. We're going to get visible view, and you can call this whatever you want. And we're going to reference our table object, get range between header and total, and we want to get the visible view. Okay, so that's the first step. Next step is we need to define our paste area, so our paste cell, and then we need to expand the size of the range that we want to paste into. This type of behavior is something we don't need in VBA, but it looks like we need that in Office scripts. So what I'm going to do is define paste cell to be this basically. So we're going to go to cell A1 in the archive sheet. We're going to jump to the bottom and go 1 cell down. So all of this part is actually what we need. So I'm just going to grab this and paste it here. We don't need this part. So now we're ready to paste our done tasks. But remember, we need to specify the location of our paste. So basically the size of our paste area. So I'm going to define that as well. Let paste location, or you can call it let paste range, equals paste cell. We want to resize this. So get resized range. Now, whenever IntelliSense is not popping up, is because we've typed something wrong. Paste cell is like this. So get resized range. And now we can define the range. The range is basically the size of our visible view. I called these long names. Get visible view, but I want to get the row count. Okay, so now I know how many rows my visible view has, but I have to deduct 1 because Office scripts is 0 based. So this is the size of the rows. Now we're at the column, so we need to go back to get visible view. This time we're going to get the column count, and we're also going to -1. Okay, so now we know where we're pasting into and how big our paste range is. Now comes the actual pasting. So that's going to be paste location dot set values. And we're setting it to get visible view dot get values. Okay, so now is the time to grab the values of our visible range. Now, if you're wondering where you can find the syntax, you can find it from the Office Scripts API reference that you're going to find in Microsoft Learn. If you scroll down here, you'll see the common classes in the table object here. You can find all the different methods that are associated with a table. And this was the one that we saw before, get range between header and total. This gets the range object that's associated with the data body of the table. Get row count is what I used before. You'll find the definitions all in here together with some examples. Now let's go back and finish our code. Now the part I'm not happy with is this part right here. I'm deleting specific rows. I don't want that. I also don't want to delete the entire row because I might have something to the side of the table. So I'm going to remove that. This part is fine. We're clearing the filter. But right here, I want to delete done tasks. And the way I want to do it is to loop through the table from the bottom to the top. Whenever I come across done in the status column, I want to delete it. Because I'm deleting, it's better to loop from bottom to top instead of looping from top to bottom. So first of all, let's figure out how many rows we're dealing with. I'm going to create a new variable called tasks rows. This is going to equal tasks, so our table, and we're going to get the row count of the table. Next, we want to grab the values that we have in this range. So let's create tasks range, and this is going to equal tasks. Now we're going to get the range between header and total, and we're going to grab the values of this range. Okay, so far so good. Now let's start with our loop. We start with the for statement. We are going to define I equals tasks rows, right? So this is the number of rows that we have in our table. And we're going to deduct 1 from it because Office Script is 0-based. And we're going to loop through this as long as I is greater than -1, right? Because we're going from the bottom to the top. So as long as it's greater than -1, we're going to do this. And because we're going the other way around, I'm going to do I minus minus. Now we're going to open the curly bracket. And inside here, we're going to do our check. So if tasks underscore range, and we have to define the row and the column. The row is going to be I, and we have to put this inside square brackets. The column is going to be 5. Why 5? Because the status is our 5th column. This is 0, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, because we also want to make sure that letter case doesn't matter, we're going to make sure this is a string, so convert it to a string, and we want to convert it to uppercase. Okay, so once we have that, we're going to check whether this equals done. Now, we need to open the curly bracket here as well for our if statements. And if it is, we're going to do tasks.delete rows at, we have the address, right? Is I and 1. Okay, so that's pretty much it. If at any point in time you want to check something, you can write it to the console. So for example, let's say we want to know what is our row count here. We can do console.log and put in our tasks rows here. So it's a great way of debugging your script. So I have no idea if this is going to work, but it doesn't look like we have any major syntax issues. Let's just test it out. So our archives now are clean. Only done tasks are there. We have 2 done tasks here. Let's run this and see what we get. Done tasks were removed from here. And in here, we just have our 2 done tasks that were copied to archive. And down here, we can see what we wrote to the console. So it said 9 because we had 9 rows at the time, right? So now it's 7 because 2 were removed. Okay, so let's just comment this out. Well, that's it basically. Our script is done. Next step is to outsource the running of this script to Power Automate. Before we do that, let's give it a proper name. And let's make sure that the script is saved, and it is. Okay, so now I want to set this up so that it runs at 10 p.m. every single day. Where do I need to go to do that? Well, not far. Just have to go back to the Automate tab and select Automate a task. This gives me Power Automate directly inside Excel, and I just need to select this template, Schedule an Office Script to run in Excel. This is going to open a tab on my browser. I can see the template here. If you aren't logged in, you might need to log in now, and then you just have to select Continue. Then all you need to do here is select what you want to have inside the boxes. So how often do we want our script to run? Well, I want it to run once every single day. If I wanted it for month, week, I can change my selection here. Under Advanced Options, I can define the time zone. Mine is UTC +1. Then at which hour or hours do I want this to run? I want it to run at 10 p.m. So I'm going to select 22. In the preview, I can see that it runs at 10 p.m. every single day. Next up, I need to define the location of my file. So my file is saved on OneDrive for Business. If you have yours saved on SharePoint, you can adjust your selection accordingly. Document library in this case is OneDrive. The file itself is saved in this folder right here, and it's called Completed Tasks. Next up, I need to select my script, which is called Archive Done Tasks. And that's it. We just have to save. You can adjust the name of your flow if you want to, and then it's good that you test it. We could, in this case, run a manual test. We can set this to manual and run our test. But before we do that, let's just go back to our file and change some of these to done. So I'm going to change this one to done, and let's also change this one to done as well. Okay, I'm just going to make sure that this is saved. Now let's go back to our flow and let's trigger this manually just to make sure that it works. We're going to click on Test and run the flow. Okay, so it's successfully started. We can monitor this if we want from here, or we just go back to our Excel file and see if it ran successfully. So I'm going to go back to Excel, and we're going to see that our done tasks were removed and they were added to our archives. Now this is going to run at 10 p.m. every single night. Of course, you don't have to have your file open. All you need to do is just make sure that it's saved on your OneDrive or on your SharePoint. That's it. One thing to point out is that you can go back to your code at any time and optimize it as you need. Well, what happens, for example, if we don't have any done tasks here? What do I get if I run this? Well, it's going to run with errors, and we don't want that. So we're going to make this better by adding an if statement so that it only runs if our visible row count is more than 1. So right here, I could add an if statement and check whether the getVisibleView.getRowCount, if this is greater than 0. And if it is, then I'm going to run the rest of my statements. So I'm going to do the copying and pasting here. So I'm going to do this until here, and we are going to want to indent this. Now you can optimize this even more by also making sure that this part doesn't run. Just for the purpose of this demonstration, this is now running without errors. So that's our Office Scripts and Power Automate duo. The recorder does help us to get started faster, and then we need a bit of knowledge to tweak it. Power Automate takes care of the rest. Let me know what you think about this. Comment below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you aren't subscribed yet, and I'll catch you in the next video.